Good afternoon again. This is Peter Bishop with Teach the Future. It's a pleasure to introduce my colleague, Katie King. Katie is the author, along with her colleague, Julia Rose West, for the Futures Thinking Playbook, a particularly good publication, we think, for teaching the future, particularly for middle school students. Katie is a Foresight professional at KnowledgeWorks, an educational consultancy in the United States. And she is also a graduate of the University of Houston Foresight program. And I believe she was a middle school language arts teacher when she wrote this book. So Katie, tell us about the book and what you would and have used it for.
Great, thanks. Yeah, excited to talk about the playbook. So we really wanted to create a foundational resource, something that a teacher could pick up and really use front to back if they wanted to dive deeply into futures thinking with their students right away. But we also at the same time wanted it to be modular. I was a middle school language arts teacher, and the number of times that I used a resource, just picked up, used it exactly as it was printed, I could probably count on one hand. So we know that teachers like to take things, make them their own, make it work for their students. So we also wanted to make the playbook really modular. So have lots of different activities that could be either used all in sequence or could be pulled out and integrated into multiple different subjects, whether the teacher and the students are doing a deep dive on the future, or whether it's a history class, or even just some creative activities in there that could work in a writing class, or even just in an advisory or something where you're trying to get students into conversation and thinking differently in whatever that context may be. So that was really the thinking behind it, that it could stand alone as its own piece, or it could be broken apart and lots of different activities could be integrated in different ways. So the book is divided into 4 sections, and they follow generally a trajectory of thinking about the future. So thinking about what is change and sort of defining our thinking about what we may want to explore the future of, doing some research and thinking about that topic specifically, then imagining what the futures of those topics might be, and then reflecting, what have we learned and what do we now know that we didn't know before. So just some examples of some of the activities that we have. One of my favorites is an introductory activity that's in the book, and it asks students to reflect on how they think about the future. Do they think it's something that's already set, or do they think it's very undetermined? Do they think that individuals have a lot of influence over what happens in the future or not? And there's no right answer to this. The purpose is to get them to think about their own perspective. And then from there, from this little futures personality quiz, they are given a personality type. So maybe they're the map maker, where they think about the future in a certain way. And when we've done this with students, it's really opened up some interesting conversations of students saying, here's why I believe what I believe. They like having this kind of description of themselves that they can relate to. And they think about, how might having this perspective help me in my own future? And how might having a different perspective help someone else? And how can we maybe find ways to balance these different perspectives at different times in our lives? So that's a great example of an activity that could really fit into any kind of classroom, any kind of context with students, but gets them introduced to thinking about the future. We then go into a lot of activities that are much more in depth. There's a heavy research focus, obviously, in a heavy for middle schoolers and adapted for kind of their level, but because we think thinking about the future is equal parts critical thinking, evidence-based, and creativity and imagination. So we really want to start them off with, what do we know? What do we see that's already changing? What signals do we have of things that might change in the future? And so they do some research guided in the book of different ways to search for those things, different ways to find sources on those topics, since doing futures research is certainly different than other types of research in some ways. And then they take that and turn it into some creative storytelling. They can create scenarios of the future that are based on their research and then their own imagination. So the book really is meant to take them through all of those processes. And the playbook itself is student facing. It's meant for students to use as a workbook, but we also have a facilitator's guide that goes with it. And in the book, there are little notations of facilitator tips that then refer to that facilitator's guide, because we wanted to make sure that teachers felt really supported in knowing how they might use this resource. We offer some guidance sometimes in group dynamics, or how to support students if they're struggling coming up with ideas, because this is a different kind of thinking than students often are used to doing in school. So we wanted to create those supports, while also leaving the resource really open for people to make it their own. We used this resource with some students in a summer camp in Texas, and one teacher in particular, she really dove into it, internalized the playbook, and then decided how she wanted to work with it with her students. So she integrated a lot of videos. They would start the day with a video just to kind of get that futures muscle working, and they would think about what this video told them about the future. They did one of the activities, instead of doing it on chart paper or with markers and pencils, they did it with sidewalk chalk on the blacktop, just as a way to engage the students in a different way. So we know that the resource is only so much, that great teachers bring great teaching and bring great teaching moves to any resource that they use with their students. And we really think that this is another opportunity to do that. So we encourage educators to take it, make it their own, do what they know is great teaching, and do what they know is going to engage their students based on what they're doing in class and what they know of their interests. So that's sort of the overview of the playbook and how we've used it and how it's intended to be used. And we really make it with a lot of respect for teachers and hope that we can create something that is useful and fun for them and their students, and can bring their classrooms to a place where students are talking, thinking, collaborating, writing, creating things that they may not have the opportunity to do with other types of resources.
Katie, I can't thank you enough for this great introduction to the book, and also for the great work that you put into it. It is a very adult process, but I can tell you the language that you used and the iconography that Julia put in, and our other consultants, has really turned it into a 7th grade project. It's wonderful. Let me tell our viewers also that the book is available on Amazon, and you can also get the facilitators tips and the ancillary materials at our library, which is www.library.teachthefuture.org. And the book has also been translated into already a half a dozen languages. If you should look on Amazon for those that we've already loaded. If you don't see your language on there, please contact Teach the Future. We're always interested in having more books sent out into all different countries around the world. So it's been delightful having you, Katie. Thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks so much.